Every pilot who's ever flown a plane has only ever wanted three things from it. They've wanted it to be able to go faster, they want it to be able to go higher, and they want to carry more stuff in it. Now, every General Aviation aircraft has a lot of strong points, but is equally rubbish in so many other ways. For example, the new Diamond DA50, a very modern, efficient engine which burns Jet A1 instead of avgas, but it's on an aircraft which has rather disappointing performance statistics. The JMB VL3, remember when I flew one of those? Very good looking aircraft and pretty good on paper too, but you can only carry 2 people. Then the Cirrus SR22, the aircraft that I choose to fly, you can carry 4 people in it. It's a very comfortable cockpit, really good on paper, great performance statistics, but it uses engine technology from over 100 years ago. This is a Cirrus SR22 Generation 3. We're actually up to Generation 6 now, and a year ago I made a video asking Cirrus to make some improvements to the next version, the G7 of this aircraft. In that year, absolutely nothing has happened. There hasn't even been an announcement of whether an SR22 Generation 7 is even going to come out, and if it does, we have no idea what features and improvements it's going to have. The only thing that did change in that year is my list of requests actually has got quite a lot longer. So here is my updated list of what I would love to see, please Cirrus, from a G7 version of the SR22. And as I go through my list, I'd love to hear from you in the comments as well. If you fly, what improvements would you like to see in the next generation of the aircraft that you fly? Starting off with arguably one of the most important parts of any aircraft, the engine, and in particular, not just the type of engine, but the fuel source that this engine actually takes. Now, this aircraft burns something called avgas, not Jet A1, which a lot of you will see at airports, especially if you fly commercially. But avgas that powers this is becoming less and less available in airports, especially when you get outside of areas like continental Australia and the continental USA. Not a problem, of course, if you are only planning to fly around, say, continental USA or Australia or even some parts of Europe. But for us that live in the southern hemisphere, if we want to actually travel further afield, which I have big plans to do in the future, it makes it really hard the moment you get into Southeast Asia when avgas becomes really hard to get hold of. See, anyone flying around the world generally takes the same kind of path on this leg when you've got into the UK and you want to get across to Asia. Most people generally go south through Europe, kind of into the northeast side of Africa here, across the top through Pakistan, India, down into Southeast Asia, and either across the Pacific or up through Russia. And the trouble is, avgas is becoming less and less available in places like Egypt, in Bahrain in the Middle East, Pakistan, some parts of India. You can generally find avgas in places like Singapore, but now I've been told as well, Indonesia, avgas is getting scarcer and scarcer as well. And I found out the other day, actually, airports like Jakarta aren't even accepting propeller-based aircraft. They're only taking jets. So even if you strapped a massive tank onto the back seat and filled that up so you didn't have to stop as often, if your aircraft takes avgas and you're planning to fly around the world, it's getting harder and harder to do that nowadays. So in the G7, I'd love to see a brand new engine, something like the Continental CD300, which is on the front of the Diamond DA50. A Jet A1 burning engine, which not only gives you more options for refueling around the world, but it's fully FADEC as well. Now, if you're not familiar with FADEC, I've used acronyms in the past like farewell, all dumb engine controls. The Cirrus currently has 2 levers which you use to operate the engine, a throttle lever which controls basically the air going into the engine, and a mixture that controls the amount of fuel. As a pilot, we manually adjust those depending on which stage of flight we're in, but a FADEC controlled aircraft means you only have 1 lever. You basically set the amount of power that you want the engine to produce, and a computer works out the rest for you. To be honest, Cirrus, if you just put the FADEC control and a Jet A1 burning engine into the G7 version off the new SR22, I think that in itself would make it the best-selling aircraft for now and for a long time into the future as well. However, there are a few more things that I'd like to suggest. The next one is actually back outside the aircraft. This is the undercarriage of the SR22. Now this is what we call a fixed gear undercarriage, meaning that it's fixed. It doesn't go up and down like some other aircraft do. Now I'm not asking for a retractable undercarriage in the G7 version of the SR22, but what I would like is a change to the design of this. In particular, this undercarriage being fixed is very, very fixed. If you bounce a landing, you'll actually bounce off the runway quite aggressively. If we could have a trailing gear undercarriage like you have in the Diamond aircraft, the Vision Jet as well, the Cirrus SR22 Vision Jet has a trailing gear undercarriage. It means that when the aircraft touches down, the wheels have got a little bit more give in them before the aircraft will settle down onto the runway. I just think it would make it a little bit easier, especially for some of the lower time pilots who don't have as much experience in this aircraft, just to be able to land it a little bit more consistently and possibly even a little bit more safely. Now, inside the cockpit of the Cirrus SR22, you can technically fit up to 4 people, including the pilot. However, when you start putting fuel in the tanks, and you can actually quite easily go overweight. You can go over what's called the maximum takeoff weight in this aircraft. For my Cirrus SR22 G3, if I have full tanks in the wings, I can't take any more than 3 fully sized adult passengers. So what I'd love to see is a payload increase in this aircraft, something like Beech did with their Bonanza, I think it was the G36. They had a 155-pound payload increase with the new version of that aircraft. It would be great to be able to fly the SR22 with full tanks of fuel and 4 passengers on board and not be overweight. Inside the cockpit, what I would really love to have, and I know I've been spoiled by this, and yes, if you watch my channel for a while, you'll know that I am a Garmin ambassador, so I'm going to be a bit biased here. In the Cirrus SR22 G7, I would love to have Garmin touchscreen technology for the avionics, exactly like we have in the SR22 Vision Jet. We don't need all those individual buttons to type in data into our avionics anymore. This is 2023. I just think in the G7, everything touchscreen. You've been at the forefront of aviation technology for a long time. I, for one, have really enjoyed flying your aircraft for a long time now as well. One question though, what's the sustainability policy moving forwards? What are you guys doing as well to minimize the impact on the environment? For people like me who love flying these aircraft, but are starting to get a little bit concerned maybe about the footprint that we're leaving behind on this planet. I'd love to know, for example, is Cirrus looking at electric propulsion as a possible future technology like some other aircraft manufacturers already are? If you're curious to know what it's like to fly a fully electric powered aircraft, this is a video I made on the Tesla of aviation, a Pipistrel Alpha Electro. Just listen to the sound this thing makes.